The Galactic Council had gathered in the opulent hall of the Imperial Core, a cathedral of glass and gravity-defying marble, glimmering with artificial sunlight. Hundreds of alien delegations hovered in their levitating seats, whispering in tones that ranged from hissing static to melodic hums. It was supposed to be a routine sentencing. 5 human women, teachers, diplomats, and 1 folk musician, stood accused of spreading cultural contamination on the planet Varlos 9. At first, the proceeding was almost comedic. The reptilian chairman flicked his tongue and read the charges as if reading a grocery list. Human subjects are found guilty of encouraging non-sanctioned emotion, nostalgia, laughter, and barbecue. The last word was pronounced as if it were a chemical weapon. A wave of laughter rippled through the hall. Cameras floated like metallic jellyfish, broadcasting this moment to every system. The women didn't laugh. They stood in silence, eyes forward, hands bound but heads unbowed. One was middle-aged, silver-haired, calm. One was young, eyes fierce like someone who'd once bartended in a mining town. The rest carried that curious human blend of fear and defiance. "Any final statement?" the chairman asked, more for theatrics than justice. The eldest woman stepped forward. Her voice was gentle, almost grandmotherly. "You don't understand what you've done," she said softly. The translator stuttered, unable to find equivalents for tone, subtext, and sorrow. "You should have left us alone." A pause. A flicker of unease passed through the spectators. Somewhere in the crowd, an insectoid envoy leaned to its neighbor and whispered, "Humans dramatize everything." Then the execution order was read. 5 pulses of violet light flashed. 5 heartbeats stopped. The broadcast ended with polite applause. Across the galaxy, the story trended for 17 minutes. Memes bloomed. Primitive species overreacts to emotional art. News anchors chuckled about overly sentimental apes. The Empire congratulated itself on a tidy moral victory. But on Earth, on a blue and white planet mostly ignored by the stars, no news anchor spoke. The signal from Varlos 9 hit global channels, then vanished. In the following silence, something shifted. Governments didn't issue statements. Military bases didn't mobilize. Civilians kept walking their dogs, brewing coffee, checking weather apps. But deep under the Rockies, under layers of steel and forgotten Cold War bunkers, a single red light turned on. It wasn't a siren. It was a signal of permission. On the Galactic Network, the Empire's chatter resumed. Trivial, smug, self-congratulatory. Admirals joked about human melodrama. The word barbecue became slang for minor rebellion. Then, 3 hours later, a distress call echoed from the Murtis trade ring, 40 light-years from the execution site. Unknown vessel, no ID, no heat signature, moving at impossible speed. The transmission stammered before cutting off. Another followed, and another. Patrol ships went missing. Communication arrays blinked out like candles. Analysts dismissed it as data corruption. Until one feed leaked. It showed a single small ship drifting among the wreckage. Human-made, rusted, patched with duct tape and steel plating. A single figure walked across the debris field in a pressure suit bearing faded American flag patches. The helmet camera caught a glimpse. A calm face, weathered, expressionless. He didn't speak. He just planted a beacon into the hull of the destroyed alien cruiser. Then, in fluent Imperial dialect, he said one sentence. "Tell your Emperor, John's awake." Within hours, every major news network in the Empire picked up the transmission. Confusion turned to laughter. John's awake? Who was John? Some tribal warlord? A myth? The Empire's archivists searched human databases and found one unsettling pattern. Across multiple alien colonies, there were whispered legends of a Terran entity called the Baba Yaga. Records conflicted. Some described a soldier, others a weapon, some a concept that humans invoked when they needed fear on their side. The Council dismissed it as superstition. Still, nervousness crept in. Small colonies began reporting strange disappearances. Ammunition depots gone, command officers missing, computers wiped clean but coffee mugs still warm. Entire task forces were deployed, and yet no human fleet was ever seen. One alien general, the cautious type, called for a private meeting. "We should not underestimate them," he said. "They have unpredictability." His colleague snorted. "Unpredictability is just chaos. And chaos cannot plan strategy." That same night his cruiser exploded without warning, silent and clean, leaving behind a single piece of debris. An old Earth coin, engraved with the words "In God We Trust." Meanwhile, alien citizens began receiving strange messages on their entertainment networks. Brief flickers between ads for star cruisers and nutrient paste, images of 5 human women smiling. Then, an unfamiliar voice, calm and distinctly human. "You shot 5 of ours. You broke the deal. We're coming to pick up the pieces." The Empire's sensors purged every trace, but the fear remained. In the markets, aliens whispered that humans didn't wage wars, they ended them. In the slums, smugglers claimed they saw entire human crews working in silence, dismantling weapons factories and leaving origami cranes behind. At the council hall, the same reptilian chairman from the trial leaned back in his seat and tried to laugh it off. "Humans are clever storytellers," he said. "They make myths so they can pretend they're dangerous." But deep down, something unsettled him. He replayed the woman's final words on a private monitor. The translator's notes flashed. Unclear meaning. Possible cultural idiom. Yet when he slowed the recording, he caught a phrase not meant for translation. She had whispered it in English, quiet but clear. "Tell John we're coming." That was the moment he realized the galaxy's smallest mistake wasn't the execution. It was assuming humans would grieve quietly. 2 days later, a scout drone returned from the edges of human space. Its final footage showed the planet Earth from orbit, cities glowing, oceans calm, no mobilized fleets. Then the camera tilted upward and captured thousands of faint lights emerging from the shadow side of the moon, like fireflies stirring after a long sleep. Each ship bore the same symbol, the mark of an extinct Terran organization thought long gone, United States Special Projects Command. The last transmission before the feed went black was a human voice, tired, almost gentle. "We didn't start this. But we'll finish it politely." The council chamber fell silent. Across 1,000 worlds, alien leaders exchanged nervous looks, pretending it was just an Earth malfunction. But somewhere, buried under the chatter and denial, every creature in the Empire felt the same chill. An instinct as old as prey itself. The humans had gone quiet. And in this galaxy, silence meant war. The derelict mining moon of Ziran 3 hung silent above a gas giant that burned like a dying ember. Its tunnels, carved from obsidian rock, were now occupied by the Imperial Vanguard, 200 of the Empire's most elite hunters, armed with biotrackers, exoframes, and neural rifles. They had one objective: capture the human known as the Baba Yaga. No one knew what he looked like. Some said he was a soldier, others a machine. But the higher ranks had begun to whisper that maybe he wasn't one man at all. Inside the command tent, a tall insectoid officer named General Va adjusted his breathing mask. "He cannot breathe here," he said to his team. "The atmosphere is methane-heavy. If the human is real, he will suffocate before we find him." A younger soldier asked, "Sir, why send so many troops for one man?" Va stared at the flickering holomap. "Because they say he doesn't come to win. He comes to end things." Far below, in the tunnels where gravity was uneven and shadows had texture, a single human figure walked barefoot through the dust. His suit was torn, oxygen meter redlining, yet he moved like someone who didn't need air. His name, at least once, had been Colonel Jonathan Wick. Earth-born, American-trained, retired 3 times, buried twice, and resurrected once by request of someone who had whispered, "They shot them, John. They shot 5 women." His face was calm, expression unreadable. A scar traced down the side of his neck like punctuation to a story he refused to tell. He carried no visible weapon, only a small thermos marked with faded letters. USMC. The Empire had studied him for years. Files described him as emotionally defective, highly efficient, unfit for negotiation. Yet those who had met him described something else, an aura that felt less like rage and more like inevitability. He was not angry. He was resolved. When the first alien patrol entered the mine, they found nothing but footprints. The tracker reported heat signatures, then static. A second team followed. They heard faint echoes, metal scraping stone, a hiss of oxygen escaping. Then their comms died. A minute later, one of the helmets flickered back online, the camera feed shaky. The image showed Wick crouched beside a fallen soldier, gently closing the alien's eyes. His voice was quiet, tired. "Should have stayed home, kid." The feed cut out again. Panic rippled through the command post. VA Corps demanded drones, orbital scans, anything to prove the human wasn't there. But the drones malfunctioned mid-flight. Sensors blinked random coordinates. Somehow, the entire digital network was being rewritten by code that spelled 3 words in Terran script. Knock. 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 The tunnels became a labyrinth of fear. Soldiers whispered superstitions. The human didn't kill for pleasure. He killed for completion, as if crossing items off a list. Wick walked silently through corridors, using shadows like language. He didn't fire first. He waited for fear to make them clumsy. At one point, he stopped before a reflective wall of crystal ore. His reflection stared back, gaunt but steady. "They think you're a monster," he muttered. "Let them be right." He touched the thermos, unscrewed it, and took a slow sip of cold coffee that had survived light years. Above ground, VA Corps finally saw him on radar, alone, walking straight toward the base. "He's surrendering?" Someone gasped. "Prepare restraints," VA Corps ordered. When the human appeared at the mouth of the mine, he raised his hands peacefully. "You must be VA Corps," he said, voice polite, almost friendly. "You've been looking for me." The alien squinted, claws twitching on his rifle. "You are the one they call Baba Yaga." Wick tilted his head. "That's what your people call me. Back home it means, bedtime story." The alien didn't understand. "You are under arrest for destabilizing galactic peace." Wick smiled faintly. "You think you had peace before us?" Without warning, the lights dimmed. The base's entire power grid failed. A tremor shook the ground. Drones fell from the air like rain. In the chaos, the only illumination came from the ember glow of Wick's cigarette lighter. He struck it, flame trembling between his fingers. "I gave you a chance," he said quietly. "You could have sent an apology. Just one." Blaster fire erupted, echoing through the cave. Smoke, screams, static. Wick moved through it like water, soundless, surgical. He disarmed one soldier with a motion too fluid to track, used another's exosuit as a shield, then dropped a single EMP bead onto the floor. The explosion wasn't loud, just decisive. When the dust settled, 30 troops lay unconscious, alive but broken. Only VA Corps remained, pinned beneath twisted steel. Why do this?" he hissed. "They were just 5. Insignificant." Wick crouched beside him, eyes dark but calm. "That's why we're dangerous, General. We don't measure significance in numbers." He reached into his pocket and placed something in the alien's hand, a small wooden charm shaped like a star. "That belonged to one of them," he said softly. "A teacher. She made these for children on your colony. You called it subversion. We call it kindness." VA Corps' breathing slowed. "You can't stop the Empire." "I don't have to," Wick replied. "I just have to remind it what fear feels like." He stood, turned his back and walked into the dust. Above, Imperial ships began retreating from orbit, systems failing one after another. Someone somewhere had triggered an override command written centuries ago in an old Terran defense protocol, something labeled boogeyman contingency. Hours later, the Imperial Council convened in panic. Surveillance drones replayed the footage. The human never fired a single gunshot on record, yet 2 battalions were incapacitated. One advisor muttered, "How does he do that?" The Emperor's voice trembled. "He doesn't fight wars. He erases witnesses." Meanwhile, Wick sat alone on the hull of a crashed shuttle, staring at the stars. He cleaned the coffee thermos with a torn cloth, then recorded a message. His voice was calm, almost polite. "To whoever's listening," he said, Tell your people we're not monsters. But when you kill peacekeepers, mothers, teachers, dreamers, you don't get soldiers in return. You get the nightmares we keep locked away." He leaned back, closing his eyes. Around him, fragments of alien communication satellites blinked out one by one, like stars being snuffed. A soft wind stirred the dust. In the distance he could already hear the next wave of ships arriving, Empire reinforcements, unaware of what waited for them below. He smiled faintly, whispered to himself, "Round 2. Then he vanished into the dark, leaving behind only the echo of a single human phrase that would terrify the galaxy for years to come. "John's awake." The Empire's war rooms burned with the glow of sleepless panic. Holographic maps flickered across the walls, hundreds of red markers showing colonies gone silent. The words "unknown interference" repeated across every data feed. No one dared say the name, but everyone thought it. The humans had woken something. And now it was moving. Fleet Admiral Sereth, a skeletal being with translucent skin, stared at his trembling officers. "It's one man," he insisted, voice brittle. "One human cannot do this." A junior officer swallowed hard. "Respectfully, sir, we're receiving reports of others." "Others?" The feed expanded, showing dozens of grainy transmissions, different planets, same chaos. Alien strongholds overrun not by armies, but by small, unregistered human crews. Some looked like miners, some like farmers, one even wore a cowboy hat. They arrived without fleets, without announcements. They smiled, talked politely, and then dismantled entire defense grids using improvised tools and local junk. The Empire's scholars called it anomalous warfare. Humans called it Tuesday. At a press conference, a panicked journalist asked, "What are these people?" The human liaison, a tired woman in a wrinkled NASA uniform, smiled faintly. "We call them veterans." Out on the frontier, one such veteran sat in a diner on a captured outpost. He was middle-aged, thick-shouldered, and wore an oil-stained bomber jacket. The aliens who tried to arrest him were now tied to chairs, untouched but humiliated, while he cooked breakfast on their plasma heater. "Hungry?" he asked them cheerfully. "You fight better with food in you. Learned that in Fallujah." The leader of the alien unit, a proud avian soldier, hissed, "You are invaders." He shrugged. "You're the ones who shot our women. I'm just here to clean up your mess." He flipped a pancake, motion casual, words sharp. "And don't worry. We're polite about it. Mostly." Word of these polite humans spread like a fever through the Empire. They were impossible to predict, impossible to kill. They used outdated tech, ancient ships, even knives, and yet every engagement ended the same way. Not with explosions, but with surrender. They didn't annihilate planets, they corrected behavior. The Empire tried diplomacy. They sent an envoy to Earth. The envoy never made it past orbit. Instead, a broadcast returned. Video only, no sound, showing the envoy being offered coffee by a smiling old man in a flannel shirt. Then static. Across the galactic net, panic turned to paranoia. The phrase "boogeyman of America" became a whispered curse. The Empire's citizens believed the humans had unleashed some experimental death cult. In truth, it was just Earth's veterans, the forgotten, the retired, the old ghosts who had once fought each other, and now fought for everyone else's memory. In one intercepted comm, a human voice laughed softly. "You can tell an American by the way he apologizes before he breaks your jaw." On the colony of Draxus, a fleet commander named Valrek found himself cornered by these so-called boogeymen. They arrived in battered freighters, flying the old Earth flag, 13 stripes and a field of stars. The Empire's ships surrounded them easily, but when Valrek demanded their surrender, the reply was unsettlingly calm. "We already did," the voice said through the comms. "About 200 years ago. Didn't stick then either." Then every Imperial system on Draxus went dark. No explosions, no screams, just silence. When power returned, every weapon had been dismantled, every comm link rerouted to a human broadcast. On screen, a man with tired eyes appeared. It was Wick. He wasn't threatening this time. Just patient. "You keep calling us monsters," he said. But monsters don't build schools after wars. Monsters don't send doctors to the enemy's kids. We're not monsters. We're just very, very bad at forgiving. Somewhere in the room, Valrek whispered. What do you want? Wick's tone didn't change. To make sure no one ever forgets the 5 you shot. Then the feed cut. Back in the imperial capital, the Senate debated emergency measures. Some wanted peace. Others wanted extinction. A senator, trembling with fear, muttered. They fight with smiles. They die with jokes. What kind of species makes humor a weapon? An older scholar replied quietly. The kind that survived extinction 5 times and called it Tuesday. As the empire fractured, neutral systems began defecting to humanity's side. Not out of loyalty, but out of curiosity. The humans didn't demand tribute, didn't occupy territory. They simply left food, medicine, and a warning. Never aim at Earth again. It was working. Fear had turned into admiration. Even alien mercenaries began defecting, claiming, the humans pay with laughter, not threats. Meanwhile, Wick operated unseen. His legend had split into myth, half nightmare, half folk hero. In secret channels, veterans followed coded orders labeled only as the quiet directive. No insignias, no ranks, just shared purpose. During one intercepted message, an alien officer shouted at a captured human. You're just one planet. You can't fight the galaxy. The human smiled through broken teeth. We already do. Every day we wake up. In the command centers of the Empire, paranoia reached fever pitch. Entire sectors shut themselves off, fearing infiltration. Yet every blackout revealed the same graffiti on the walls, a crude Earth flag and the words "Be polite. Be patient. Be prepared." That phrase spread faster than any fleet. It wasn't a threat, it was a promise. Finally, the Empire's Intelligence Bureau found a clue, a pattern linking every destroyed site. All attacks were coordinated with eerie precision, yet no central command could be traced. One analyst realized too late that the humans had never used the Empire's network, they had replaced it. Messages, orders, and propaganda were now flowing through a system hidden beneath the Empire's own data grid. And at its core was one origin signature. Earth Defense Command, Operation Homebound. By the time the Emperor saw the report, it was already too late. Every Imperial broadcast station switched to a human signal, a single phrase looping endlessly in calm, American-accented English. We don't want your empire. We just want the shooting to stop. And then, as if to underline the message, hundreds of Terran ships appeared across the galaxy. Old, mismatched, patched together from decades of junk. They carried no banners, no threats. Just silence. But in that silence, the Empire felt something ancient stirring. The kind of quiet only predators make before the strike. Every alien commander watching the feed shared the same thought. The boogeymen weren't coming. They were already here. The imperial capital was no longer a city. It was an echo of one. Towers that once touched the clouds now stood fractured and silent, wrapped in smoke and ghostly light. The air hummed faintly, not with battle, but with the strange calm that follows it. The Galactic Empire, once infinite, had been reduced to a trembling shadow. And somewhere among the ruins, the human named John Wick walked toward the throne room with a gait that was neither fast nor slow, just inevitable. He didn't wear armor. His coat was torn, dust-stained, and his right sleeve was burned at the edge. His pistol hung loosely in his hand, not as a weapon, but as punctuation. The palace gates, once guarded by legions, now creaked open under the wind. He passed through them as if he had every right to be there. Maybe he did. Inside, the Emperor sat slumped upon a shattered throne of crystal and bone. His robes were torn, his eyes hollow from sleepless nights of reports he couldn't comprehend. Fleets gone. Armies vanished. Systems erased. And now one man, one earthborn anomaly, stood at his door like a grim courier of inevitability. So, the Emperor rasped, voice thin and cracked. You are the human they call the Baba Yaga. Wick stopped at the foot of the stairs, gazing up at him. His expression was almost kind. That's what your soldiers call me. My people don't call me anything. They just send me when it's too late to apologize. The Emperor tried to summon arrogance, but it came out weary. We thought your species was primitive, emotional, self-destructive. You were right, Wick said. We are. But we learned to weaponize it. For a long moment, silence filled the hall. Thick, almost reverent. The Empire's last surviving guards watched from the corners, their hands trembling on their rifles. They didn't fire. No one dared. The air itself seemed to hold its breath. The Emperor's eyes flicked toward the pistol in Wick's hand. You came to kill me? No, Wick said softly. You already did that yourself. I just came to deliver the message. The Emperor frowned. What message? Wick stepped forward, his voice low, steady. When you executed those women, you didn't just kill humans. You killed a promise. They were peacekeepers, teachers, healers. The deal was simple. Hurt 1 and we'll rebuild. Hurt 5, and we erase the idea of you. A flicker of understanding crossed the Emperor's face. Too late. You wouldn't destroy an entire civilization for 5 lives. Wick's tone was almost gentle. You still think we count things that way? He reached into his coat and pulled out a small object. A wooden star charm, worn smooth by time. He set it on the floor between them. One of them made this. She gave them to alien children on a mining world you conquered. You called it propaganda. She called it hope. The Emperor's jaw clenched. You want vengeance? No, Wick said. I want silence. The lights in the hall dimmed. Outside, a ripple passed through the sky, a quiet tremor that made every surviving alien glance upward. Orbiting satellites began to blink out one by one, their feeds replaced with a single Terran insignia. A calm female voice spoke across every channel, translated into every language. Operation Homebound complete. All hostile systems neutralized. Reconstruction will commence where apologies are made. The Emperor looked around wildly. What have you done? Wick's voice remained calm. We turned your empire off. You can't. We just did. The great holographic map behind the throne flickered to life, showing the galactic network fracturing. Planetary lights faded like dying embers, communications severed, fleets stranded. Every trace of the Empire's digital infrastructure was dissolving into nothing. It wasn't an attack, it was a deletion. Wick spoke again, quieter now. We didn't destroy your worlds. We made them forget you. Every archive, every record, every song that carries your name, gone. You'll exist, but no one will remember who you were. The Emperor's face twisted in disbelief. Why? Why erase us? Because mercy hurts less that way, Wick said. If we let you live knowing what you did, you'd try again. This way, your children will build something better, without knowing why. The Emperor stared at him, eyes glassy. You call that mercy? Wick nodded once. It's the best kind we have. A long silence followed. The only sound was the faint crackle of burning data conduits. Wick holstered his pistol, turned to leave. You'll become what we were, the Emperor spat weakly. Conquerors. Monsters. Wick paused at the doorway. We've always been monsters, he said. We just choose the direction we aim. Outside, the wind carried the smell of metal and ash. Human ships hovered in the crimson sky, not fleets of conquest, but fleets of erasure. They weren't here to occupy, only to end. Wick walked through the ruins, stepping over broken banners and flickering holograms of propaganda that no longer mattered. A transmission echoed from his comm. The voice was female, calm, professional, unmistakably earthborn. All sectors confirmed. Empire networks offline. Awaiting final directive. Wick looked up at the stars. Initiate memory relay, he said. Leave 1 survivor per world. Witnesses matter. Acknowledged, the voice replied. As the signal faded, Wick sat on the palace steps, pulled out the old thermos, and took a slow sip of cold coffee. The horizon shimmered as the first dawn light touched the ruins. Somewhere far below, the Emperor's palace collapsed into itself, quiet as a sigh. Wick didn't watch. He stared instead at the wooden charm in his hand. "You were right," he murmured. "We should have left you alone." A childlike voice, recorded, almost a whisper, played from the charm. "Be kind, Mr. Wick. Always be kind." He smiled faintly, the kind of smile that comes after the worst storm, not before it. Behind him, Earth's transmission filled the galaxy for the last time. "We are not gods. We are not devils. We are what you made when you mistook kindness for weakness." Then, silence. Wick stood, brushing dust from his coat. "You shot 5 women," he said to the wind. "You woke 5 billion wolves." He walked away as the palace crumbled, leaving behind only the echo of that calm, tired voice that had haunted the galaxy. "We don't start wars. We end them, politely." The sky burned gold as the Empire vanished from every chart. And beneath that fading light, the last human smiled, quiet, weary and victorious.